Hey everyone, welcome to our second day of coding up Mad Libs. If you haven't watched the first video I uploaded, be sure to do that because it'll help you understand what's going on in this one. So just to recap a bit what we did last time, we set up our online coding environment and we talked about these things called strings, functions, and variables. So there's a link to a Google Doc that has instructions on how to set up your coding environment. So make sure to take a look at that to make sure that you have things set up correctly. In order for you to find that link, basically what you do is you go to the Breakthrough Kent Denver Student Portal, you hit the Stars tab, and then you hit the Math tab, and that's going to take you to my webpage. And so if you scroll down on that webpage, you'll see that there's a link to that document under the section called Announcements. So definitely make use of that if you haven't so far. So with that being said, we're going to be doing some new stuff today, so go ahead and open up that file and repo that you were working on last time, or make sure to create a new one if need be. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all, and we're going to walk through a couple of things together. So I actually need to use all of this. I'll keep that. Okay, so now for the other things that I said. I talked about strings, functions, and variables. Let's take some time to review what they are. So remember that we said a function is just a set of instructions for the computer to execute. The computer needs to be told explicitly what to do, and we tell it what to do in these functions. So we can make many different kinds of functions, but the most important one is this one right here that says def main. This is where we write the instructions for the overall program. And so we also talked about these things that were called strings, and we said that strings were basically just the type of data that the computer recognized, right? So strings are just collections of characters that you can type onto your screen. So for example, if I were to write something like that, that would be a string. It's a nonsense string, but it's a string nonetheless because it's a collection of characters that the computer can recognize. So sometimes we might have a pretty long string that we may want to use many times in our code. So for example, if I expand this string a little bit and do this, again, it's nonsense, but it's still a string. If we had to use this string in our code, it would be kind of annoying, right? And so I then introduced the idea of this thing called a variable to you, right? So variable is simply a container for storing information, right? So instead of writing this long string out all of the time whenever I wanted to use it, I could maybe do something like write the word nonsense and then put an equal sign between these two, and then put this long string in quotation marks. And in doing so, what I've essentially said is that everywhere that we use this term nonsense, it's going to be replaced with this right here. And so I have this print statement right here. Let me show you exactly what I mean. If I print, nonsense, it's not actually going to print the word nonsense, right? Because we set it equal to this thing. It's actually going to print that very long thing. So this is, very helpful. It saves a lot of time. So keep in mind, variables are very important. We're going to be making use of a lot of them later on. Okay, so I think that's enough review for now. I want us to start talking about some new stuff. So I promised that we would create some more functions. So let's go ahead and do that. So I want you to navigate to some white space, like so. You can just hit the enter button a couple of times. And I want you to write this line exactly as I do. So we're going to do def user input, POS, and then a colon. And then we're going to go ahead and hit tab. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what all of this means. So the first thing is, this is a function that we've created. So within this white space right here, so if we go to the colon and then hit the tab, you'll see that it brings you to the next line, and the next line is slightly indented, which is super important in Python. This is where we're going to write all of the instructions for this specific function. And so before we do that, I want to walk you through what these parts mean. So we see this thing that says def, it's highlighted in blue. So that means that it's a keyword, it's a special word that the computer understands. And so what this computer understands is by writing this blue word def, we're saying, okay, we're going to create a function. So the computer is like, okay, you're going to create a function. I understand that when I get to this part, I should be looking for some instructions. In addition, we also have this part that says user underscore input. And so this is just the name of the function. Similar to the way that variables have names, functions also have names just so we can refer to them. We call this user input. It's a very good name to give it because it's very descriptive, and for functions and variables, we want everything to be as descriptive as possible. I'm sorry, one moment. Just yawned. We want everything to be as descriptive as possible because we want it to make sense when we read it. So we know that in this function, we're going to be making use of some user input. So let's just call it user input. So now let's talk about this last part, this word POS in parentheses. We're going to pay special attention to this, actually. We're going to pay special attention to it because it's this thing that we call a parameter. And that's what one of the things that we're going to be teaching you in this lesson today. So a parameter is just a piece of information that's passed to a function that it's going to need to complete its job. So something that's helpful to think about is think of programs as factories and functions as the workers. So the ultimate goal here, right, is to produce a final product, and each worker or group of workers is responsible for a specific part of the product. So you can imagine that there's a car being built, and that one group of the workers must make tires. But without any information about what the tires should look like, you know, maybe things like their diameter, their thickness, or even their color, these workers would have no idea how to produce these tires. And this quickly becomes a hazard, right? Because you have, you know, ill-fitted tires on cars, you have badly made tires, and that means that people crash. So this is why parameters are so important. They give functions the info that they need to do their job. So with all of that being said, let's actually type out some information in this function. Let's type out the instructions. So if we're here, right past the colon, we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and we're going to write this. We'll do user input. We're going to set that equal to input, and we're going to type this, please. So I want you to copy this exactly as I do it, and then I will explain to you why this makes sense. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go ahead and return our user input. Okay. So this was kind of a lot, but what we did was we just wrote a function and we gave it some instructions. So let's talk about what each of these instructions mean. So, you know, let's break this part down. We have this thing that says user input, and we set it equal to this thing that says input and a bit of information here. So remember how we printed something on the screen last time, right? We had written this word print, and then inside of the parentheses, we had written the thing that we wanted it to print, right? Well, it turns out there's another function that's called input right here that works pretty similarly. So what it does is it asks the user a question that you, as the coder, specify in the code. The user then responds, and then you can save that info in a variable. So what we put in the parentheses, right, is please give me a blank, and that's a string, right? And then we tacked on to that this POS thing, right? And so let's talk about POS. What exactly is it? Well, POS is just a variable that we made that's short for part of speech. And so we're going to be using it to refer to things like nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So somewhere else in the code, we're going to specify exactly which parts of speech we want. But for now, it's okay to simply tack onto this string POS. And so a bit of abstraction. What we're doing is we're pretending that there's a part of speech that's here that we're going to tack on to that string. That probably wasn't the best explanation, so I'm going to explain it one more time. We already have this part of a string called please give me a, and then we add on to that string POS. The POS is simply a placeholder for something like a noun, an adjective, or a verb. Okay, so now that that's taken care of, let's talk about this line right here. So it says return user input. So what exactly does the word return mean? Well, a return statement is the thing that a function gives back to whoever called it. So if we keep in line with the car factory analogy, right? After a group of workers have produced a tire, they need to send it somewhere, right? It's not just going to sit there. So what they'll do is they'll give it to their boss, who will then take it, to somewhere else and move it along, right? So this is known as returning to one's caller. We're just returning information to the thing that requested it from you, right? So in short, we're giving some information back to a different part of the code, right? So by using this return, we're just kind of throwing up, I did not like the way that that sounded, so let's not use that. We're throwing to another piece of code, this thing called user input that we just created here. So let's see this in action. If you go up to our main function and type this, so actually first let's remove a couple of things. So if you go up to your main function and you type POS is equal to noun, for example, and then you type answer is equal to user input, and it pops up, so you can just click that and you pass into it the word POS and then print answer. What you'll see when you run it is this: please give me a noun. And it's actually one word. I don't like that, so let's go down here. Let's add a space to clean that up. So we're going to stop it, and then we're going to run it again. And it says, please give me a noun, right? And so once that pops up, you'll see this little white thing that's flashing, and then you can type a noun onto the screen. So let me type something like dog. So doing so, it prints what I just typed. So this is going to be super important for making our Mad Libs, right? Because in Mad Libs, we ask for parts of speech. So this is one step in that entire process, and we're going to slowly tick away at creating this entire Mad Libs thing. But you're definitely one step closer, so you should be proud of yourself for being able to do this. So just like last time, now what I'll need from you is a picture of your screen with the code that I just told you to write. So, this stuff right here. You can email it to me at rickr@stanford.edu, or you can just text it to me at 786-406-4505, and I'll make sure that you get your breakthrough points. So thank you for sticking around, and I hope that you stick around for the next video. Take care.